Hi all, Dr. Clark here again. For natural resources today, we are going to examine coal. So remember, we're talking about non-renewable resources. I kind of gave you an introduction to coal, natural gas, oil, and now we're going to kind of dive into a little more data on these different non-renewable resources. So if you look at, and this is very similar to the figure graph that I showed you last time, but these are the top 5 countries that consume coal. And you can see there's the United States. We've been pretty steady, a little bit, rising a little bit through the 90s into the early 2000s. And now it kind of took a dip. It's going back down. But for the most part, the United States has been pretty steady over the last, say, 35, 40 years. China has really skyrocketed. As of like 2011, they were well above 3 times what the United States was consuming, and this has started to kind of peter off, but they're still up above the 3,000 million short tons. 3,000 million short tons. India is also on the rise, and so India is more of a developing country. It's fairly developed in regions, but overall, India is still on the trajectory of a developing country. And then other countries similar to the United States, like Germany and Russia, seem to have flatlined on the amount of coal that they consume. So we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail. What are the benefits? I mean, clearly, China is benefiting a great deal from the utilization of coal. The country is very wealthy now, and part of that probably comes from the coal industry. But also, what is the cost to that wealth? Okay, so if we look at the world production of coal, these are the top producers of coal, and if you're a green dot, it means that you are in the top, basically the top 100%, or you're the top producer. And China is the top producer of coal. China produces about 2 billion tons per year. If you look at other regions throughout the world, you can see that the eastern United States, quite a bit of production, a little bit in Canada, fair amount in Europe, some in Indonesia, some in South America. But for the most part, China rules the roost when it comes to production and when it comes to consumption. So coal use, by far currently is the most abundant fossil fuel, and for the most part it's used to generate electricity. Again, like I said before, and I kind of laid these out before, there are 4 different types of coal: lignite, sub-bituminous, bituminous, and anthracite. And they differ mainly by the water content, the amount of extra material in there, non-carbon based material, and kind of the density of the carbon. So lignite has really high moisture, and because it has high moisture, it has low energy, and it's not very desirable when it comes to using it for generating electricity. And a lot of you probably seen coal streams or coal beds, and maybe even driving on 80 or driving in the eastern United States, you'll see these cuts through the road and you'll see this black coal. And I've been asked by many individuals, like, why are we not taking that out? Most of it's lignite, and most of it's a pretty poor coal, and it burns very dirty and doesn't burn very hot, and so the generation from electricity is not very good. Sub-bituminous, okay, lower moisture than lignite, It has a higher carbon construction or carbon density than lignite, and this is used often to fuel power plants. Bituminous, again, lower moisture than both sub and lignite, and a higher carbon content, so higher density of carbon molecules. Most of the time, this is used when you need a high amount of energy, whether that be like steel manufacturing or some power plants that are on grids where there's lots and lots of homes and places. You'll see a lot more of the bituminous used in those regions. It's easily mined and very abundant, and so right now it supplies about 20% of the world's energy requirement just from bituminous coal. Okay. And anthracite, high carbon content, the highest carbon content, lowest moisture content. It's relatively rare, and it's very unlikely that you're going to use it to generate power. Most of the time it's utilized to either heat buildings or for specialty uses in coal manufacturing, so utilizing coal in other industries. There's been some work done on like using coal to create, say, a product to make like helmets better, or industrial strength material, and it's anthracite that is used to make those different materials. All right, so extraction. There are two main ways at which we extract coal, especially in the United States. We either do what we call a strip mine or a surface mine, where we remove layers of material from the landscape until we get into a coal vein. We remove the coal, and then we keep removing layers of the landscape. And then there's other extraction methods where we go underground and find the coal vein, and instead of removing a bunch of topsoil and dirt and bedrock and things like that until you get to it, instead you just dig through that material, creating a coal cave, I guess, an underground mine, and you can sample the material from there. This is very dangerous, much more dangerous than surface mining, because of the potential for collapsing, the potential for harmful carbon dioxide or particles from coal dust and things like that getting into individuals' lungs. And this is where most miners who suffer from black lung disease, this is where they got it from. They got it from working in a enclosed mine digging coal. So we're going to watch a little video about kind of the coal industry and black lung and what's going on potentially in today's society with these individuals that are suffering from black lung.
An ABC News investigation into a new fight for workers who embody America's can-do spirit, coal miners. They do one of the toughest jobs in the world, and tonight they are battling the companies they've worked for their entire lives. ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross is here with this exclusive report. Good evening, Brian.
Well, good evening, George. Black lung disease remains the scourge of coal country. And yet we found in a joint investigation with the Center for Public Integrity that big coal companies have been able to avoid paying millions of dollars in black lung benefits to ailing coal miners, thanks largely to doctors at one of the country's top hospitals. After a lifetime of working in West Virginia coal mines, Steve Day's doctors found he had black lung from breathing in so much coal dust. The disease scars and shrinks the lungs, and once again is on the rise among miners.
My doctor says my lungs are shot.
Steve Day says he can't be far from his oxygen tanks, and in 2005, he was awarded a $1,000 a month disability benefit under a federal program for coal miners with black lung. But Day's coal company appealed the case and then won after it hired a doctor at one of the country's most prestigious hospitals Johns Hopkins in Baltimore.
They represent masses.
Dr. Paul Wheeler found Day did not have disabling black lung, the same opinion he has given against hundreds of coal miners who also have been denied benefits. For Dr. Wheeler's opinions, the coal companies have paid Hopkins millions of dollars. You've become essentially Dr. No.
Yes.
You never find black
No,
lung.
I do find black lung.
Not according to what we've seen. According to available records from the last 13 years, examined by ABC News and the Center for Public Integrity, of some 1,573 cases, Dr. Wheeler never found a single case of the severe form of black lung that would automatically qualify a miner for benefits. Not one. And you stand by all those cases?
Absolutely. That's my opinion, and I have a perfect right to my opinion.
Based on the opinions of Dr. Wheeler and a small circle of other expensive doctors, coal miners across Appalachia, men like Mac Lester, are fighting a losing battle to get black lung benefits. At best, fewer than 1 in 10 is successful.
I have no idea what happens once the x-rays leave my department.
Does it matter to you?
It would matter to me if I were wrong, and no one's proven to me that I'm wrong.
But we found he's been wrong a lot in over 100 cases, including that of Gary Fox. It was only after Fox died that an autopsy proved Fox had black lung, after Wheeler's opinion had been used to deny him benefits for 10 years.
It's a total national disgrace. The deck is stacked in theory and in practice against coal miners, men and women, and it is tragic.
And in the case of Steve Day, we sent his medical file to the doctor who once oversaw the government's X-ray screening program for black lung, Dr. Jack Parker.
This is a classic case of black lung.
Is there any doubt about it in your mind?
No doubt whatsoever. This represents advanced black lung disease.
But it comes too late for Steve Day, who says his doctors have told him he now has only a few months to live because of a deadly black lung disease that Dr. Wheeler said he did not have.
And it's unfair. And if he doesn't have black lung never did exist for anybody.
Yet Dr. Wheeler's opinion for the coal companies continues to carry the day in one black lung benefit case after another, based largely on his credentials from Johns Hopkins, which says tonight it has no reason to doubt Dr. Wheeler's medical findings, George.
But now there's some movement in Congress on this.
That's right. Senator Rockefeller has introduced legislation to pursue a way to end what he calls the injustice, the imbalance between the powerful coal companies and their money and the miners. But he says it's a tough fight. These miners suffer in silence, and there hasn't been much attention paid to it until tonight.
And you're going to have much more tonight on Nightline.
That's right.
Okay, Brian.
Okay, so there you can see a little bit of headlines that are hitting news sources in the last year or so, last couple of years. And, you know, there has been some legislation moved forward. Donald Trump has moved forward some of legislation on this, but nonetheless, it's a real travesty in many cases to these miners because they're not protected. They are doing a very dangerous job, and after they develop black lung or after they get injured, you know, a lot of times they're abandoned by these companies. So that's not to say that this doesn't occur with every company. I'm just, you know, giving it to you what's hitting the headlines. So you might have seen some things on black lung and whatnot recently. All right, so back to kind of coal mining methods. So again, the methods are kind of twofold. So either you do a surface mining method where you're just dozing off material until you make it to the coal bed, and then you're removing that coal bed. Okay, and then the more dangerous method, I guess more suitable to certain environments though, is to actually dig a shaft mine and reach the coal seam and remove the coal from that shaft mine. Now you can imagine that dredging off the mountaintop is not very environmentally friendly when it comes to, you know, you're just cutting the mountain away. And underground mining methods are often approved more readily than, say, dredging the mountaintop. So the more dangerous method is approved more often than the less dangerous, but in many cases this less dangerous method is more environmentally destroying than the shaft mine. All right, so when we use coal or when we utilize coal, there are some significant problems with coal. First of all, it's bulky compared to the other fossil fuels because it's a solid, and so you have to contain it in less abundant form. So you put it in railroad cars or something like that, and you can't put as much coal in a railroad car than you could natural gas in a tanker or oil in a tank car, something like that. So it's bulky, there's a lot of airspace around that, it makes for transportation problems. And then we already talked about the mining process can create a lot of dust pollution and a lot of pollution in general. The other piece of this is, even though we have much better methods today than we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when burning coal, you release pollutants, right? Especially depending on the type of coal that you're burning. So if you're burning lignite, you're going to release a lot of pollution. If you're burning sub or bituminous, less, but still there are compounds within that's bound to that carbon that are pollutants, and so sulfurs and things like that that can be considered a hazard to individuals downwind or just to the atmosphere in general. On top of that, you're releasing carbon dioxide, which we now know is linked to climate change, at least in 99% of all scientific articles on the issue. It's been linked to climate change. So we still utilize it though, because again, like I said before, it's the most abundant natural resource, or well, most abundant fossil fuel. The other things that we can have is you can have some issues with what we call acid mine drainage. So when you're removing coal, if there's any water or moisture in that region that can get into the water table, you can get sulfur buildup in the water, you can acidify the water and change things. The other thing that happens is some of those molecules that you don't want in the coal, the non-carbon based molecules, can come in the form of mercury. And this can be released in the air, but also released in the water. So these can be major issues when it comes to dredging the coal out and then burning the coal. Okay, so here you can see a surface mine that's been unreclaimed. So it's already been, it's already been done, and you can see a little bit of plant material that's on it. And depending on the state in which the mining operation occurs, depends on how much reclamation you have to do. In some cases, after the mine is gone, you have to bring topsoil back in as that company, and you have to replant native vegetation. So in here you can see this is a reclaimed strip mine, and you can see these vegetation. It looks much nicer, less dredge marks than you would see in this situation where you can just still see tailing mines that are just all over the place with very little vegetation. So it really depends on the state and what that regulation looks like. Some companies will face a very large fine in states if they do not reclaim that mine area. So pay for that mine to be reclaimed. Now, there are issues though in that dangerous method of digging coal mines, so digging what we call a shaft mine, in that yes, it's all occurring underground, but what you can do is you can cause divoting in the landscape. And so you can see this here, you can see all these holes that have formed, and these are just tracks, and they're forming in a straight line because the mine shafts are going in straight lines underneath the ground here, and you can see that they're just caving in. The tops of those mines are just caving in after it's been abandoned. And this can result in hazards to humans, hazards to wildlife. It can result in non-plant growth in that region. These kind of things can occur as you get subsidence, as you get settling of the environment after the mine has closed or left. Okay. And the other piece that we often see is we see drainages from these mines. Now, these mines are directly in relationship often to water areas, because coal is the result of plants being stacked on top of each other, being compressed underwater. So you'll still see often the regions where the mine has happened, that you still have water, underground springs or underground streams and things like that that will eventually come to the surface. And we can have acid mine drainage occurring where this water source is completely dead of organisms, and that will leach into another water source, which will also cause the acidity of that water source to go up. And it can be a huge problem and a very expensive cleanup. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk about oil and natural gas next, and then we're going to talk about nuclear, and that should be enough on the non-renewable resources. Okay, so but just for your information again, we're going to talk next time about oil and natural gas, and I might split the two. It might be oil and then natural gas. It just depends on how much I want to say about each one. And again, I'm not a proponent for any of these. I'm just providing you the evidence of what these different natural resources and what these different energy sources do to the environment and for the environment. Again, economically, coal is amazing. It's made countries that were third world countries be developed in what we call first world countries with lots of wealth. But as a component of that comes the hardship of cleanup, waste management, pollution, the danger of the mining operation, etc. So with that being said, we're going to approach oil next time.